But he made the stars.
What is up, creatives? It's Jahrell, your music technologist, here to help you master the tech you need to make music freely, make weekly tip and tutorial videos, as well as gear reviews on all things music production. Enjoy that kind of content? Hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can be the first to catch the next one. So I'm super pumped to get into this video. This is the first of a 3-part series where I'm going to go in depth with my new release, Stars, giving you the background on the production of the beat, the recording and mixing of the vocals, and then finally talking about how I distributed the song. So in this video, we're going to dive into my Beatmaker 3 session for my song Stars. I'm going to show you guys just how I put everything together, and maybe this will give you some good tips and some good inspiration for making your own music. Let's jump in. So right here is my full session in Beatmaker 3 for my song Stars. It doesn't look like that many tracks, but we're going to dive in and show you exactly what I did. So first things first, the very first thing that I laid down for this track is actually this little audio clip right here that I played myself. So that formed the basis of the track. Let me show you how I made that. I used an app called Fingertip Midi, which is actually a pretty cool MIDI controller, and I mapped that as a MIDI controller into Beatmaker 3 using an instrument-free plugin, which you should check out, called Primer. So I actually started out with this A minor chord right here. Then I added the E flat minor. Then I added the D flat minor. Then I added the E major. That started the basis of the track. The next thing I did, I also used Fingertip Midi, but I'll just play for you what it sounds like since you know how Fingertip Midi works already. But it's this bell sound right here. Once I had that, I was off to the races. That was a pretty inspiring chunk right there once I got that down. So I had a cool pad going and I had a cool melody kind of sample going. The next thing I went to was adding drums. And you might be surprised to know I actually used a stock pack from Beatmaker 3 for this, and I'll show you. It's the Ashes kit. So I played my drums in right here. Those are the actual snare and kick that I used. I also used the AK hat. And I'll play you what the drums sound like. Pretty simple, actually. But I knew I needed something else to it, so I wanted to add a little bit of live drums. I just grabbed myself a tambourine and recorded myself playing that, and these are the little tambourine parts that I added in right here. So this is generally the order I follow when I make a beat. I generally start with some sort of chords and then some sort of melody idea and then drums and then generally bass to tie it all together. And then I'll start adding all the ear candy stuff that I want. So once I got this down, the next thing you heard it was bass. And I actually used 2 basses for this. Both of them are the Moog Model D plugin, which is free. You need to cop it now. But for real though, it's actually loaded with dope sounds, especially bass sounds. And I'll play you what that part sounds like. So I actually played that in, and once I had it in the one instrument, and I'm telling you, I scrolled through pages and pages of Moog Model D to get the sound that I wanted. I picked two. Here's one of them by itself in the same spot. So that's how I got that raspy sound, but then I also added this one for a little bit more depth of bass. And once I had the bass in, that was pretty much the basis of the whole track. I had my drums, my bass, my bells, and that pad, which made up the majority of the hook. So here it is. I know you guys were waiting for me to talk about that live string section at the beginning of the song. That was actually inspired by this section right here, where I played in this viola melody. From there, I knew I wanted to build a whole string section for the beginning, so I started adding in different harmonies. Now, a pro tip for this, if you're somebody that plays any kind of single line instrument and you want to create rich harmony, what I did was I actually played in some chords myself on the piano, and I put that MIDI data, I'll show you what it looks like. I played it in on a basic instrument. I just pulled up times because that's what I had access to. Here's what that sounds like. So, not the best sounding instrument, but that's not what I made it for. What I did was I went in to this MIDI and I created single lines for each harmony for myself. So I took this, essentially this melody line for this line, and I played it all the way through on my viola, and I did that for each harmony. I played each line in individually until I got the whole string section, which sounds like this. Fun fact, the low section, which sounds like a cello and bass combination, is actually just my viola pitched an octave down. Here's what that sounds like. Not bad for a viola that's trying to be a bass. Now I think my favorite part of this whole instrumental is actually this string swell that I put in right here leading into the drop. Here's what it sounds like. Once I had that in, I was so hype. One more time. Another fun fact, for those that want to know what that random sound is at the beginning of all my tracks, that is mine and my little brother's producer stamp. It comes from a clip, maybe I'll put it in right here, of my little sister. So for those of you that wanted to know where my production stamp comes from, there you go. So next up, I added some really big pad swells in the verse sections that are actually just offering some contrast between the verses and the chorus. Here's what that sounds like by itself. Another one of my favorite sounds in this whole track that came from a free plugin called Primer. And I knew I wanted to start sparse with the percussion at the very beginning and build up to it, so I did just kick and some auxiliary percussion samples in here, and here's what that sounded like. The next thing I worked on was the pre-chorus, which I wanted to lead into the chorus, and I wanted it to be a bit of a transition, and I knew I wanted to have some singing in there, so I tried to leave it with a little bit of room for singing, and I just did some very basic things with the pads. The pad that I talked about at the beginning, I actually doubled that and brought that double up the octave. And then I also added the bells section. And I put all of it through a Koala FX filter, and here's what that part sounds like. For those of you that are wondering how I made that riser, and yes, I did make that riser from scratch, here's how I did it. It's actually kind of a fun process. So I actually started literally with just a sample of me going, shh. From there, I put it into the sampler. I chose just a tiny little sample of it and I let it loop on itself. So here's what that sounds like. Then I went ahead and EQ'd it just so I could bring it down to just the high range. Then I threw some reverb on it. I added an SV filter just to bring the highs up a little bit more. Then I threw on an auto pan, which I automated. Then I also automated a talk box effect using Koala FX. Also, there's a little bit of filter in there just to get that sweep just right. So it's pretty amazing what you can do by just recording yourself making some sounds and knowing what effect you want to create. The Beatmaker 3 sampler is super powerful for stuff like that. Now there's a section in the verse where I have the same bells effect that I automate a talk box effect on using Koala FX, and I'll show you what that looks like. And if I go to my Koala FX channel, here's what that looks like. Koala FX is definitely becoming one of my favorite apps to use for just doing all kinds of crazy stuff with my sounds. If you haven't seen my video doing an in-depth review on Koala FX, definitely check it out. I'll link it right up here. Back to the track. So next up, just a couple more things, but in the second verse, and only in the second verse, will you hear this actually cool effect that I did. So there's a little effect in the background happening that I created, and I'll solo it here so you can hear it. Here's what it sounds like by itself. What this is a single wood block that I actually hit. Matter of fact, and yes, this is an official wood block, an actual percussion instrument. It sounds like this. I recorded myself doing that, and then I put it on a grid. Matter of fact, I'll show you. And literally just recorded myself doing random rhythms with it. Obviously, it's got lots of effects on it. Here's what that effects chain looks like. I've got an EQ on it. I've got an auto pan, so it'll go between both ears. I've got a sidechain compressor on it just so the kick cuts through. And then I did a lot within Koala FX. So I have a bit crush on it, which is why it sounds very distorted and grainy. And then I have a reverse on it. So everything that's playing, it's playing the regular audio, but it also has an effect of some of it in reverse playing at the same time. And then I automated a talk box effect on top of that. This is what all that looks like. Stuff like that that's super complex, but just adds a little bit of something to your track, it really makes all the difference. Investing your time into making things that maybe no one will ever notice, but it sounds good to your ear, that's the mark of good production. So, and that was pretty much all there was to it as far as instruments go. The rest was just formatting. Now, I didn't follow any traditional formatting method. I just generally figured out that I wanted to have a more stripped down chorus, and I ran with that. And then I knew I wanted to have a build up as a pre-chorus that was totally different, so I did that next. And then I worked on my verses, which I wanted to build up into the pre-chorus. And then I decided to do that string section, that string intro, which I also use as the outro, and that made the track. Now, the format I used as far as how many verses and how many choruses and things like that is pretty standard stuff. I have intro, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, chorus, outro. So there you have it, you guys. That was the breakdown on the production of the song Stars. If you haven't heard the song, again, I'll put all that stuff in the description. Check out the song, stream it up. Me and my brother really went in on this song, and I'm super pumped about it. Hopefully this breakdown gave you guys some inspiration, some tools to help you make something dope. My biggest inspiration to you is push yourself to finish what you've started. The experience of releasing something you've worked hard on is like nothing else. So stay tuned for the part 2 of this series, where I'm gonna break down my vocal recording and mixing process for this song. Stay tuned. Until next time, creatives, go make something dope, and I'll see you in the next video.
But he made the stars.